so this is our presentation of LCCUI's History Club Europe Trip 2014, the Bruce and Andrew edition. So this is us. So I'll play this one. This is us, the entire group, at the Canadian Groesbeck Cemetery in Holland, right outside Operation Market Garden, and right outside that area. So, and then that's all of us. And
this
then
is at the main gate in Belgium. We were part of the ceremony, so we took a picture after the ceremony with all of us in the group.
the only awkward thing is we have no pictures of us in the ceremony because you know I look through his and I'm looking through mine. I'm like, where are the pictures? Wait, we were in the ceremony, so there's no pictures of us. They're online. I forgot to get them, but you know, we actually did do the ceremony. We're not lying to you guys. We did lay the wreath. So.
How many folks were there that day?
For the Man Gate ceremony?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, 200, maybe.
No, come on.
More?
At least 1,000.
There were 4,000.
Okay, come on,
There were
that's a
4,000.
huge number.
No, there was people outside of the gate
Was
and
there?
everything. Yeah. It
Yeah, I
was
didn't
stretched
even
down
notice
the
those
street
people.
because they closed down the street, and it stretched down the street.
And there was at least 2 or 3 film crews. The evening news was rolling. At least 10 photographers. Like, it's a huge deal for them. They do it every single night. So it was quite impressive, actually. And then at Groesbeck, it was a very quiet, sunny, nice day, and then someone started cutting the lawn, which really ruined the moment. But it's nice that they take care of the cemetery very well. So, you know, a little bit torn on that one. So these are the 5 questions that we are going to answer throughout the presentation as well as we can. And then the first one is, did we learn anything about Hugh Murray McQueen? Sadly, no, we did not learn anything more about him. And we actually didn't even get to visit many of the battlefields he actually fought at. We didn't get to go to Passchendaele, and we didn't get to go to any of Arras, or we didn't get to go to any of his battlefields actually. But we did get to go to the Battle of the Somme at Beaumont Hamel, and he wasn't there specifically, but we decided to show some pictures just to show you what the battlefield looked like. So, and Neil can probably tell you a little bit too, because Neil, you went here, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So we have right here are the Canadian front lines for Newfoundland, and then here are actually the German front lines. Not really front lines, they're more like ditches in the ground, but they're there. And then this is us from Newfoundland looking forward to the Newfoundland front lines. Over here are the German front lines, and then this is just a path that walks in between through the battlefield. It's all like shelled and cratered and everything like that. So the second question is, what got you into that? And I'm gonna let Bruce go first.
Yeah, so this is my moment that just knocked me down on the ground in the trip. This is the danger tree in the Somme. The story is that was the only place that the German defenses were destroyed enough for the soldiers to get through. So they were all running in a single file, basically to this one path next to this tree to get through and attack the Germans, and they just sat there with a machine gun and just knocked them down. That's where the Newfoundland Regiment got wiped out. They went second right after a British battalion just got decimated. So that was the moment I stood there by myself for about 5 to 10 minutes. And still think about it, I get a little teary-eyed because it's just so powerful to stand there and wonder how many people died 5 feet away from me.
The biggest thing that we said, like Miss Jackson told us, is I actually didn't know that like a British battalion had gone first. So these men had just watched 1,000 men die before them, and then the Newfoundlanders, they didn't just go once; they actually went twice. They went once, and then they fell back, and they lost more than half. And then the British said to go again, and without question, they got up and they went again. And then all the men, I think it was out of the 900-man regiment, 90% died. I think like 67 could stand for roll call the next day.
Yeah.
So it was a heartbreaking moment. So.
Yeah, this was a tough battlefield to be at.
Especially because the main thing about the battlefield too is we can't really show in the picture, but like I said, Neil can help too, is that the battlefield is very small, actually. Like lengthwise, widthwise, gosh, probably like not even like 1,000 meters, 500 meters wide maybe.
Yeah, it's quite compact in one area. I think it's like, it looks to be like 1 or 2 acres, this whole area.
And you're like, how does so many men die in this one area? But it happens. So, and then this is sort of like, this is more of mine, this is like my little teary-eyed moment of the trip, was the Groesbeck Canadian War Cemetery, because I'd been to a Canadian cemetery in Hong Kong, but it was not, well, it was sort of as bad as this one, but nothing compared to this one, especially for all the unknown graves. So for both these buildings on the side are all the names of the men that they could not find their bodies, and there's about like 1,000 men and the tombstone stretches as far as the eye could see. And if you can see this tiny little speck in the background, that's this. So, and that's about the size of like 6 men, so you can just tell how far these tombstones go all the way back. So, I'm going to read, because I'm not very good at memorizing. So the day at the Grosbeck Canadian War Cemetery in Holland was a hard day for everyone, actually. Coming into the cemetery is unnaturally quiet, somewhat eerie, but at the same time it's quite a beautiful place to be. The graveyard was filled with over 1,000 Canadian graves, with the youngest one, he was only 17 when he signed up, he was 18 when he was killed. And he was from Montreal, I believe, so. And which is the same age as Bruce and I now, it's actually the same age as a lot of boys on the trip. When we were there, we were also tasked with getting a name, and then finding his tombstone and writing down some things that are on it, as well as some personal information, maybe that was, hopefully we could pick it up. It was a very sad moment as we all looked up and down the row upon row of names, every one of them showing who they were and how old, where they served, and how old were they when they died and stuff like that. And it was horrible, really, to look at. The worst part was that when you thought about it, this is only like 1/40th of all of Canada's Second World War casualties, which is probably my hardest part, because like there's so many graves here. It's like 1/40th of the men we lost overseas.
Yeah, there's at least 25 stones on each side. So you walk down the middle, and there's 25 on this side, 25 on that side.
And everyone has to find their own stone, right? So it was almost too much. And then, so my man, he was a little different than others. He was actually 41 years old at the time, so it's actually quite old. He was a doctor at the Canadian Medical Corps, and I looked up a little bit of history, and I got home. Gosh, I forget his name at the moment now. I probably have a picture, but he was actually a very established, well doctor from was it Alberta or something like that? But he was set for life. He didn't have to go to war, but he did it anyway because everyone was. And he was serving in a Canadian medical tent way behind the lines when artillery shells struck the tent and it exploded, and that killed him. He left behind a wife and 2 young children. One was 11 and one was 7 at the time. And that's when I thought about it, that these are men and boys with families waiting for them back home, and their families that will never see them again. So that was probably the hardest moment of the day. We also went around, we took chalk, and we put like wax paper on, and we like wiped down the chalk so you get like an imprint of the tombstone. Mine was awful, so I didn't bring it. I don't know how yours was, Bruce. Mine turned out awful. Yeah.
No, I didn't do mine. I just sat on the ground next to the stone, and I sat there for probably 10, 15 minutes. It's to sit there, like, if you walk into a cemetery, you see all the stones, you read the names, it's kind of cool. But then you go here and you walk, as Andrew said, you walk in and it feels quiet. There's like a little bubble around the cemetery. You can't hear the cars anymore. You can't hear the sounds of the world. You can't hear anybody's problems anymore. It's just quiet and it's peaceful. You can hear a few birds, but that's it. It's a really special place to be.
And then the lawnmower ruined it, that was awful, but And then the last detail I would like, it's sort of a good story, was that a man who served the time, he was 17 when he signed up, he got out of the war, he was 19 when the war ended, but when he died later on, when he was like 70, way later on, he actually had himself buried in the far back left corner because he wanted to be buried with his brothers who had died. So that was a very nice moment for us. But his tombstone's a little different, but the military allowed him to have almost the same tombstone as everyone else who had died. So, the Men in Gate wreath laying ceremony, which we have no pictures of us laying the wreaths, but
We did it, I swear.
yes, we were there. So we'll talk about this a little bit together. So for me, the Men in Gate ceremony was a huge honor for a history lover, because you hear about the Men in Gate all the time and the wreath laying ceremony and how special it is. So it was a huge honor for me, but also it was a huge honor as a Canadian. The Men in Gate has all the names of the British and Commonwealth forces who died during World War I with no grave except for the Australians, I think, or except for New Zealand. I don't know. They have something else. It was an honor to be able to lay a wreath in honor of all the Canadian soldiers who lost their lives during World War I, not just for its historical significance, but also for Canadian being able to have a chance to remember to those who fell in such a special way. Like, remember say is one thing, but this was like something totally different for me. So it was a real honor to be able to do that.
Yeah, this is, to talk about the gate itself, these are all the names. This is probably about 15 feet high, each stone. And it's probably got 4 or 5 rows of names on each stone. And it's probably at least 40 to 50 feet long, each corridor. But it's all the names are all inside here too. It's coated with names. And it's just, to look at them, look at all the names and to try to wrap your head around how many men that actually is just mind-blowing.
Is it categorized in some way?
Yeah, it's by country, and then it's in alphabetical order.
And by battalion.
And by
as well.
battalion, so it's country, battalion, alphabetical order.
But this is the one wall here, and that's from the same side. This wall is this wall, and then it's mirrored on the opposite side, and then each side has a staircase where you're going up. It goes like this, then on the sides, and it goes up again. And every single wall on that staircase has all names as well. So there is so many names on there. And then the ceremony was, we start right here. We started down here. It was Bruce and I and our friend Sarah. We had one wreath. She was in the middle of us. We walked it. We walked across here, like Bruce said, there was people all the way spilling out the streets all over here. People were spilling out all the way that way. There was everyone there. They do the last post. The Belgian army's out there. They have, oh gosh, they at least have 50 soldiers by themselves doing the ceremony for them, which is awesome. And then you walk it and you lay the wreath right up here, and then you walk back, and it's probably one of the coolest but hardest things to do at the same time.
It's a really surreal moment because you want to just stop and cry in the middle of the street, but you can't. You have to keep walking. So I felt really honored, and I felt like that is the most Canadian I've ever felt by putting our wreath up for all the soldiers to see. And there's you can see here there's a hole in the ceiling. And at one point in the trip, the girl that was with us asked, like, why do they have that? And then people are like, oh, because of the rain, like, you gotta get the water. But it's like, no, I kind of figured it's God, so that God can look down, and all the soldiers can look down on everybody that honors them every single day.
And
So
then she started bawling.
Oh yeah, like, and then everybody was crying.
Oh, and it's completely silent too when you're laying the wreath.
Yeah, the
No
town
one
basically shuts down.
Completely. No cars move, no buses, no public transit, not
Nobody
even a
honks their
phone
horns.
rings.
Everybody turns their car off.
So for like an hour, nothing happens in this town. It's completely silent, which is very impressive. If we do something once a year, they do something every day for a full hour.
Mm-hmm.
The last post, they always lay a wreath. There was another school from Toronto that was laying a wreath. There was another school from Britain, and then there was another committee from somewhere else in Europe laying a wreath. So people come from all over the world all the time to lay a wreath at the Menin Gate every night. So it was an honor basically for us to be able to actually do that.
Just to note, there's 65,000 names on that Menin Gate.
Thank you, Neil.
65,000.
See, we cannot even express by saying there's all these names on this wall, and then so.
To look at a number is so much different than being in a cemetery and like looking at the wall. Like 65,000 is just massive.
And every single one of those guys had a story. That was the biggest thing we did. So we even took a couple pictures of Canadians from this wall that we'll be doing research on History Club in the future after Petrolia has been completed. We'll be doing research on these guys because these are all the guys with unknown grades as well, right? So there was a lot. Okay, so what made you proud as a Canadian? Bruce and I actually had the same idea. So we're going to talk about one thing, and our proudest moment was definitely Vimy Ridge.
Yep.
Because, well, it's Vimy Ridge. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's just, that's like noted by many, like a lot of history teachers and many historians will say that is the moment that Canada became a country. So it really, we felt like we were part of that country making, being there.
I'll read my whole sheet. There you go. So there were many, many, many occasions during which I felt an unexceptional pride to be Canadian, ranging from Juno Beach to Vimy Ridge to the Somme and everywhere in between. But I would have to say that my proudest moment as a Canadian was at Vimy Ridge. Looking up at that monument towering over the top of the ridge, coming out of the fog in such an eerie and beautiful way, made me more proud than I have ever been of being a Canadian. Because the coolest thing I think about that morning, we were telling a couple people when we first got here, is that it was so far off in the distance when we showed up. So as you're coming up and you're walking towards it, you sort of telling this one, it's coming out of the fog. This was by like 10 or 11 by the time we were leaving. But in the morning, you couldn't even see the monument as you were coming up. The closer and closer you got, the more like came out of the fog. That was this amazing thing to look
When we
at.
got there, you couldn't get the whole monument in one picture because of the fog. Like you had to stand so close, and you couldn't get it in one picture because it was so foggy. But it added to that sense of actually being there, like feeling the battle had just happened because all the smoke is there. It felt really cool to be there.
But at the same time I was feeling this pride, I also felt a great sense of sadness, because engraved on the memorial are thousands and thousands and thousands of Canadians with no known grave who also fell during these horrible battles. So we only took pictures of the monument. These are the trench systems. over where the 3rd Division was. So it's like the monument's here, the 3rd Division was like way over here. I think. I'm horrible at geography.
Yeah.
It's over here, but here's the German lines. They ran along the ridge, but then then we come up here, and here's the monument here. So that's where the 3rd Division was, but the monument was still my coolest. I was gonna include pictures of the tunnels for you guys. Cameras don't work well underground, apparently in the dark, so they turned out not very good looking.
But you got to go in the tunnels.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was cool because we saw the maple leaf engraving in one of the rooms. That was really
And guys would sketch, like, I thought it was sort of like a rumor, like an old story that they actually did sketch their names into the wall. No, there's like names everywhere. There's the names and there's symbols and there's like little notes they've written to people at home and stuff like that. So it's very cool to be able to read that. And they let you touch the Canadian thing too, like the maple leaf, and that's awesome. And so these are Canadian trenches, clearly, like our tour guide was saying, these are clearly built up a little better nowadays than they were back then. We also got to go to the German trenches, and the German trenches were superb compared to the Canadian trenches. They had like the pillboxes, and we got to go in a cool little pill, like a one-man pillbox. It's like this big, and then we got to go in there, and then we got to go in the tunnels, and we also got to see the crater at Vimy, the one very famous crater where the Canadians are on one side and the Germans on the other. And it's like they are not kidding you. When the two of the craters side by side, there's one here and one here. One's behind the German lines, one's between us, and they're bigger than houses. You could put your home inside.
It's a huge crater, but you can see the other line. So it's maybe 50 feet across this ginormous crater that just goes probably 25 feet down. But it's just, you can see the other line. It's like, that is so close.
So it's a very cool thing to see. So, Vimy Ridge was a very impressive sight to behold, but its historical significance made it even better. This was like the battle that everyone reads about, talks about, and knows about, especially in Canadian history. Historians say that it was the battle that created our country, and to be able to stand where they fought was a huge honor and sense of pride, especially for a country that was just considered like a colony back then. So it was very cool just to be there. Are you leaving us now?
By the way, I gave them the questions, so if any of the questions are goofy, it's not their fault.
Okay. And if you guys have any other questions, you can totally ask, because we're ready to answer. We're ready to talk for hours, but we didn't want to do that to you guys, so we didn't. So what struck you from the German perspective? So like, we have 4 main pictures here, and Neil might recognize some of these, because him and his wife are in the same one. So this is a German bunker at Normandy, and this is another German bunker at Normandy, one of their guns. This gun was one of the guns that was hit, and then this is their trenches at Vimy Ridge, and this is their trenches at the Somme. So, let me talk about the German first.
Yeah, I'll add in when I've got it.
Okay, so this is more of like a my thing, because being a person of German descent, my mom's entire family is German, and they all fought for the German army in the Second World War. I always tend to look at history and the situations that unfolded in slightly different ways than my friends who had their families serving in the Allied armies during the Second World War and First World War. My great-grandfather, along with his brother and many, many, many other male members of his family, 13 in total, served in World War II. They served from Paris to Stalingrad, down to North Africa, from Italy to Greece to the Crimean, and they also served in Holland and everywhere in between. My great-great-grandfather served on the Western Front during the First World War, where he emerged unscathed. So, as you can tell, having German heritage plays a large role in how I see history compared to everyone else. From the German perspective, the thing that struck me the most was how they went through exactly what we went through, and sometimes actually even worse, because they were doing all of the fighting, right? So, from the trenches of World War I to the battlefields of World War II to Normandy and everywhere in between, we saw just how bad the Germans had it. It never actually got any better for them either. They were a defeated people, fighting to just survive, basically, from 1914 all the way up until like the 1950s. So, like, because when we went to the battlefield, you always expect, like, Germany, they always had the upper hand, they were always on the defensive, right? But it was horrible for them still. Like, we looked at things like this, and, like, these things were, like, they saw battle too, like, pickpocketed with shell marks, and most of their guns were actually totally destroyed, so you imagine the horror the crews went through as they were bombed by our Navy ships. And their trenches were almost, this is their trench line at the Battle of the Somme. So they went through the exact same thing we did. It's just, we never really hear from their side. So I like to remind people that they were just doing what their government told them.
Yeah, people look at this and go, oh, the Germans have better defenses. Well, that is quite big, but they're holding a coastline and they're taking huge, these are not small. Is that me?
Yeah, it's you. I wanted to do that for size.
There's, that's me kneeling down. Those look small, but those are huge shells that are bouncing off of that. And people look at this and go, the Germans had huge defenses. Well, then you look at this, that's like 3 or 4 feet deep. That's nothing. You can't even stand up. So I would have to be like this to be protected in the trench. Like, seeing these two, this is all built up, but seeing these two being at the battlefield and going, that's the German defenses, I thought all of that was that. It's not. And then as Andrew said, they were defeated people. They fought other countries by themselves. People don't remember them as much because they were the enemy, but they were just doing what their government told them. They were still just a people fighting for what they thought was right because that's what the government said to them. So it gave you a different perspective on the war and the battles that they faced in. Because they were the enemy to our army, but they were also people too.
Most people just see them as the Nazis, and I hate that. I'm not gonna lie, I really hate that, because my great-grandfather, he was not a Nazi. He was just a German soldier. He actually never even fired a gun. He never even killed a man. He was an Air Force clerk. But people see him as an evil man just because he fought for the German army. And like, he had family members. He had family members who died as well. And when he came to Canada, he would go to Remembrance Day in the 50s. They didn't care that his family had died in the Second World War because they were the enemy at the time. They only remember the Canadian soldiers. So I'm hoping as time goes on that we learn to remember that we were not the only ones fighting and dying. It was also them as well. So especially at battles like the Battle of the Somme, the Germans lost almost the same amount as the British in the long run. And battles like the Battle of Verdun, where there was 1 million casualties, but it was 500,000 French, 500,000 German. They lost the same amount of men we did. They suffered the same we did, but they suffered even more. Because after the war was over, their suffering never ended. Not till almost the 1990s did they even become a country again and get everything back to normal. So it's been a long journey for the German people. Okay, so how did it change your perspective on history? Well, this is a hard question to answer. I don't really like this question. So how did this trip change my perspective on history? It more or less did not actually really change my perspective on history, but it more so enlarged it. I finally got to actually stand on the battlefields that I read so much about, because I read a lot about history and I watched a lot of movies before Europe, and now I've actually been there. And being there changes your entire outlook on it. No longer were Vimy Ridge, the Somme, Dieppe, or Juno Beach just places I had read about. I had been there. They were more real than ever before, and it made me feel extremely lucky to be able to just go and see them. So I felt very blessed to have this opportunity to go over there and be exactly where they had stood.
Yeah, it puts, when you read about it, you think about, you build a little map in your mind of what the battlefield will look like. But being there and feeling it, it's so much, you stand there and you actually it's all grassy and you don't see any men anywhere, but you get the feeling that there are. At Juno especially, Juno was really foggy that day, and you could feel men running just outside of your vision. Running up, you could kind of feel the guns, you could kind of feel the noise, you could kind of feel the activity going on. And that was all the battlefields. No matter how quiet it was, you could still feel the war going on. And it made history so much more real, because you read about it, it's all that's in the past, it doesn't happen anymore. But it makes it come into the now, and you feel it now, and it lives on. So it added, I have a lot larger perspective of history now. It's no longer just a book, it's now a place, and it's now a part of me.
I was going to say the biggest thing for us too is I can never grasp the size of anything. That's why I have these two pictures especially, because Juno Beach, like the Americans had their two and the British had their two, so I thought the Canadian beach would be small. I was so wrong. Like Juno Beach was so big that I couldn't even see from end to end of it. And then the biggest one was Dieppe. Neil, you were at Dieppe as well, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you got there, did the size of how big the battlefield was shock you a little?
What shocked me was where the German gun placements were and where these men went right in between them.
Yes.
Huge 88mm guns.
Right here is a picture. It's foggy that day, but this is a picture of. This is what Dieppe looks like, all rock. And we'll get to our Dieppe run in a second. We did the Dieppe run. It's awful.
It's really hard.
So there's cliffs way up here, and then on the other side there's cliffs way up in the distance, and these were just lined with German guns. And then it's literally just like this. It curved in a little bit, and the men landed right in the center. on the rocky beach. And you're standing there and you're like, how did one man even get off this beach alive? Like, there was no way. So we had a German tour guide, which he helped us a lot. So he decided, he had this great idea of let's try the Dieppe run. So basically, you go and you put your 1 foot in the water, and then the beach goes like this. It goes up, forward of a rocky hill, like 50 feet, up one rocky hill, another 30, 40 feet forward through the rocks, up another rocky hill. Then you got to run the whole flat part here. That's about another 50 to 75 feet. Get to the seawall, jump it, and you got another 200 feet to get to the town.
Yeah, because the buildings are where they needed to go. And it's just, we ran it and we're like, oh yeah, we can all do that. And everybody, oh, the teenager that thinks they're just invincible. But you get up that first hill and you're slipping and sliding all over the place, and rocks are hitting you in the back and everybody's pushing each other. It's just, to run it with no gear, that's the thing. We set all our backpacks down, we just had our clothes on, and we took off and everybody sprinted right off the bat. By the time you get up the first hill, you're just dead.
Because you're sinking in like at least 3-4 inches of rocks. You're slipping, you're sliding, there's rocks getting flung. The German guy started throwing rocks at kids because he wanted to pretend to be the German, so he's
He
throwing
wanted
rocks
that
at
a
kids.
sense of realism, so he was throwing rocks at us. And
Hit Bruce.
he got me, but we kept running, and it was just,
Out of the 27 kids who did the run, we didn't make it to the town. We stopped
we
halfway
stopped
through
at
the
the road
grass.
so we didn't get hit.
There were 7 kids that actually made the entire run without collapsing with just
And
exhaustion.
there was 27 of us.
And then you add combat gear, you add being seasick, and then you know what's most important, you add getting shot at. That's probably the biggest deal, and we have no idea how any man made it.
With 80 pounds of gear. That's like, because we just ran where we thought, all right, we can do this, and 7 of us made it, and we're like, yeah. And then our teacher was like, okay, now put 80 pounds of gear on and do it again.
And be waterlogged and seasick, have the Germans shoot at you. And the town was their first objective. So like Neil said, it was just where the guns were, it was surprising that anyone just got off the landing craft to begin with. So, that was basically my biggest mind-blowing thing to do, so. Thanks for having us, that's it. This is us in Holland. We're here being goofballs like teenagers do. And this is us at Napoleon's French Medical Hospital. He was our first at the French Medical Hospital, so he set that up for army vets, and this is an old First World War French tank. So, that was it.
Thank you, Bruce and Andrew, very much.
Thank you.
We really, really appreciate it.
How far did your teacher run?
She didn't run at all.
She didn't go anywhere.
And she's a gym teacher. So
Yeah, she teaches fitness, and she's a CrossFit teacher at Sharky's, and she sat down and said, it's too hard.
So is there any questions? Is there anything you guys would like to
Anything, we'll do our best.
At Dieppe, there were 6 men met their objective that day. They all had an objective to get to, and there were only 6 men got to where they were supposed to get to. So it was, just
After being there,
I can see
believe
it.
it. We
Yeah.
believe it.
That's what I mean. See, that's the story I did not believe. Because I'm like, how, as hard as it sounds, like how hard could it be to get up a beach, right? Because you think of our beaches and you think of like 20 feet of sand and then you get to the tree line, right? But Europe's beaches are totally different, and this beach was awful. It's like thinking of Canterbury Park, but 1,000 times worse.
Yeah, and if only 7 of us made it, with nobody shooting at us and no gear, out of 30, that's,
Pretty bad.
yeah, we understand the whole number.
Thank you, done a wonderful job.